Hello. So today I'll be talking about teaching ELL students and giving my 5 truths that I learned from the readings this week. And this is our last video summary, I believe. So yeah, here we go. My first truth is that incorporating strategies for ELL students does not necessarily mean you need to drastically change your lesson plan. So, what I mean by this is basically that many strategies that will benefit ELL students will also benefit native English speaking students. This week in our readings, we read about multiple strategies that increase comprehension, including there was a role playing activity from the Hook, Line, and Sinker article, and there was another one, concept mapping, that was from the Powerful Learning Tools for ELLs article. So these kinds of strategies not only work for ELL students, but also benefit native English speaking students as well. So building a classroom community with enriching learning activities that definitely differentiate for ELL students, but also just finding a base of like really, really great activities that will be beneficial to all students will make your life easier as a teacher. And yeah, those two I really liked. I thought those would be really helpful for both, and I think there's a bunch of other great activities that can be used. So my second truth is that it's very important to incorporate lessons that relate the topic you're learning about to the bigger picture idea. And by doing this, you'll increase comprehension for your ELL students because they'll understand why they are learning what they're learning. Again, in the Hook, Line, and Sinker article, this was a quote from the authors. They said, "In the process, students learn how to apply scientific evidence and data to better understand and explain the importance of preserving a viable and valuable bluefin tuna fishery for the benefit of humans and the global ecosystem." So this example was really good because they learned all of this content, but they were applying that and understanding why it was so important to the global ecosystem. It's not just a bunch of random facts to memorize. It tells them exactly why this material matters. And then another way to sort of show why things matter is to relate lessons back to the ELL students' prior knowledge, in particular their cultural knowledge. So in the Powerful Learning Tools article, the authors write that teaching science to ELLs, when teaching science to ELLs, the concept of prior knowledge needs to encompass native language, previous science learning, native literacy skills, and cultural knowledge and life experiences. So considering all these aspects of the student's prior knowledge and creating culturally relevant examples while also connecting concepts to the big picture ideas will ensure that students really know why they are learning what they're learning. They'll be more invested in their learning. They'll be able to take that information and bring it home to their families, and just making all of that relevant and showing them why it's important will make learning more enjoyable and I think increase their understanding of the material. My third truth is that teachers need to find a balance between sheltered instruction and science inquiry to benefit EL students. So this truth came from the Blending Language Learning with Science article. So we learned about the similarities and differences between sheltered instruction and science inquiry, which I had no familiarity with sheltered instruction, so this was just a good article for me in general to become aware of that technique. But basically, sheltered instruction is defined as teaching content to English language learners in strategic ways that make the subject matter concepts comprehensible while also promoting the students' language development. So that's sheltered. And then on the other hand, scientific inquiry, which we've all heard of, I'm sure, is much more explorative. There's less direction for the students. They're sort of, creating their own learning. And so this strategy might not always work for ELL students because um, when you're teaching these, you know, these very intense literacy requirements, you would want to give more direction. So, kind of finding a balance between these two strategies is really important. Um, and they define the main differences of the approaches in the lesson objectives, which I thought was really interesting, and how they're presented. So, sheltered instruction generally has objectives that define the what, which is the content, and also the how, which is your language aspect. So, this reminded me of when we were writing our um, academic language lesson plans and how important it was to define the operative verb and making sure that each student knows the steps to achieve the operative verb, and then also how do they know they've achieved it? Is it measurable? How do the students know that they're learning what they should be learning? Um, so writing these clear objectives with the content, language, what, how is really important, especially for ELL students. Um, and then on the other hand, inquiry-based learning requires a sense of discovery, challenging students to create their own procedures and make sense of outcomes. So, and also avoids revealing the learning outcomes before the appropriate moment. So my main takeaway point of this whole article was just finding a balance between these two approaches, because every student could benefit from both, and if you are able to weave them together and create detailed objectives that still promote exploration, but while giving enough direction to ELL students or students who need some more support, but then still allowing for that scientific inquiry, letting them discover things. So yeah, that was my takeaway point for that, with just finding a balance there. Then my fourth truth is that the next generation science standards are very demanding content-wise, which I knew, but also literacy-wise. So I hadn't made that connection yet. I hadn't read them from a standpoint from the literacy standpoint. So from the Oki Lee video and the Stanford article, I learned that these standards require explicit attention to language skills, and she named the four most important as constructing models, constructing explanations, giving arguments based on evidence, and validating and communicating information. So all of these skills are very related to one another and very language intensive, and then they're also present in the Common Core standards. So when I design my future lesson plans for my future classroom and students, I'll need to keep these in mind in particular when considering my ELL students. So providing maybe a scaffolded approach or using some of the other techniques that we've learned to support their learning will be very important when looking at these standards and developing those literacy skills. Okay, and my final truth is from this week's reading, is that literacy requirements are not only demanding for students, but they are also demanding for the teacher. So the teacher must implement practices with an understanding of all their students' English proficiency, even if you're not an English teacher. A teacher in Washington State is teaching reading and writing to everyone. I'm not just going to be teaching biology. So in the article, Language Demands and Opportunities in Relation to the NGSS for English Language Learners, in that article, the authors write that the teacher must define and facilitate a classroom culture of discourse. This culture should be inclusive, accepting contributions from their meaning and their value in the discourse, however flawed or informal the language of the speaker. It should support students to maintain a spirit of shared sense-making and discovery while they question others, ask for further explanation, and provide arguments that refute an idea expressed. Most importantly, for ELLs, it allows students to hear many examples of the discourse that they're expected to produce. wow, this is a big responsibility. So teachers need to support all students no matter the English proficiency levels. And just a couple of ideas to help uh, the teacher, you know, support the students to the best of their abilities. Staying educated, getting to know your students, seeking help from other colleagues, attending professional development workshops, reflecting on what's working and what's not with your students are all ways to improve on, you know, teaching science literacy and just reaching every student. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys. And sorry, my roommate's phone was just ringing, so I hope that wasn't too distracting. But thanks for listening, and I will see you guys later.